Thank you. Thank you, Sandra, for the warm introduction, and to Manna Gallery for giving me the opportunity to have my first solo exhibition. And to you all for coming and supporting me and making me nervous the more and more people that, oh no, like I really gotta say something. So, but I really, it feels really good to be among friends and fellow artists and to share my story. So thank you. And thanks to my husband and son who are filming. That's why I'm wearing a little caterpillar. It's voice, check. Okay. So this exhibition is born from a hole in the ground, a piece of wire found in a basement, and a desire to connect with a small Baltic country. Mostly my work is a healing process. You know, I don't make a stand. I don't really say much about the state of the world with my work. And this body of work is similar, although I have some more to say. But it's really hard to describe, which is why I was so anxious giving an art talk. So the easiest way to describe what's going on here is a visual. So, you know, putting my arms like this, if you look around, you'll see circles everywhere. Some of them are closed, some of them are open, some of them are partial. And so if you want to join me, if you have free hands, put your hands up like this and see how that feels. And put them together and move them apart. And see if it feels different for you, depending on how that is. For me, it feels really, really different. And sometimes the closed circle can feel like protection. Sometimes it feels like a boundary. Sometimes it feels like the capacity to actually hold something, right? And sometimes if it's open, it might feel very vulnerable, but it also could feel like possibility. And so that's what's going on here. So this past winter, I did a month-long art residency in Estonia. Estonia is a small country just across the water from Finland and nestled up right next to Russia. I was there at a place called Copperleg Art Residency, which is about 18 kilometers outside of the medieval city of Tallinn, right next to the Baltic Sea. It's an old schoolhouse that's surrounded by fields. It's been a residency since 2017. I went there because that's where my family is from. If you read my newsletters or follow me on Instagram, you've probably heard some of the stories of my family. In 1944, they escaped a time when Russia was taking over Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And they escaped. They went to a displaced persons camp in Germany, where my mother was born. And then when she was a little girl in 1950, they came on a boat to the US. So my grandmother, who was alive until I was a teenager, I was very connected with her. She was 20 when she had an hour to pack everything in her suitcase and leave Estonia. And she never returned. And despite everything that happened to her in her life, she was always a glass half full kind of person. So this show is my way of remembering even the things that aren't my own memories. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit from some journals, just to give you a better idea, because like I say, it's really hard to explain. So in my application, I sought out a residency when I realized I wanted to connect with my family. And in my residency application, I wrote, I want to make up for lost time, to ingest history, soil, and emotion, to truly be present in the land my grandmother loved and left. By the time she felt it may have been her Estonia again, the only condition in which she would return, her blindness had taken any interest in travel. It was a long time before any of us went, unfortunately. I was afraid our family in Tallinn and Pärnu, some of the descendants of people who hid in the woods, would see me as a daughter of cowards. Instead, they put out black bread, handed us boxes of photos and letters, and knocked on strangers' doors. They really did, telling the new residents about the people who lived there a lifetime ago. Her Estonia had been waiting for us all along. So I was accepted. I immediately went to the internet to find out how much the snow we were going to get in February, because I was really excited to see snow. It was a lot. And and I went on my way. So on the plane, I wrote, 3 days ago was my mother's 78th birthday. She and my grandmother are gone, and I'm going to Estonia to look for lost time in the crumbs of black bread and the subtleties of language. What will I do there? Once, on a flight from SFO to Heathrow, I wrote an entire album of songs. I am not a musician. I was infused with thought as I am now. I was alone, my husband ganged up with the kids and the screens. So the night was long and quiet like this one. Maybe that's the thing, to write your opus, hole up on a 10-hour red-eye by yourself. We don't know if this is an opus yet, but I feel something. It's a combo of emptiness and rushes of thought feeling. So I got to Estonia, and I was surrounded by containers, pickle jars, giant jugs of apple juice fermenting, people with hearts full and broken. I saw circles everywhere. Everywhere, I was circling back to something that I always knew inside, that I had forgotten was there. I also made connection to a round piece of wire that I found in the basement. There was an old printing press there, so I had made this nice circle and squeezed it up, hoping to print a circle, and it popped open in the press. And I realized how much I loved this little gap. And that's where that piece of possibility came from. So I started printing a lot in the press. Again, not knowing what I was going to do. Normally I work with wax, as you can see, but I was playing with the press. So I also thought a lot about time when I was there, this concept of lost time, found time, and so much so that I ended up building a 7-foot-tall sundial, totally unexpected. I sawed it all, with just a saw on my own. I made friends with the lady at the paint store trying to figure out what color to paint it. I wanted it to be the right shade of Estonian blue. This blue is too much this, and that blue looked too Russian. All these things. So we got to get the right blue. And then I ended up leaving that sculpture in the sculpture field, and it was a ceremony of the village. We put it out there. That was a big part of what I did there. But before I built the sundial, I thought that maybe I would support it in the ground in a hole, and it would sort of kind of stick up out of the ground and create the shadow that way. And so I dug this hole for the sundial, I thought. That's why I was digging the hole. And I got down, fortunately it hadn't snowed yet, so I could get into this. It was very vigorous because this wasn't totally frosted, the ground, but it was firm. And there were these big rocks. And so I just got down on my hands and my knees, and I used my fingers. I didn't have any gardening gloves with me. And I was pulling out, trying to get this rock out to make it deep enough, I thought, to sink this sundial. And I just saw the dirt under my nails, and I remembered my grandmother saying, if you scratch an Estonian, you find a farmer, and she always had these beautiful gardens, and I just felt this rush of connection with her and with my family. And I thought, oh, this is why I dug the hole. So I wrote in my journal, my mother went to Estonia only once, watching it pass through the window of a taxi. I think it was as much as she could bear, growing up hearing the stories. Or maybe it was because she told herself she was more than her peasant history. On that trip, in those years, she was far from being the firstborn of 8, whose $500 scholarship in 1964 only opened doors to marriage, and 4 years later, me. On that trip, she was cruising the Baltic in luxury. So when they docked in Tallinn, she hailed a 1-hour taxi. Show me the important places, she asked the driver. In contrast, I sucked it in. I was wanted to meet everybody. I wanted to eat only beets and cottage cheese. I just wanted to just breathe in everything I could from Estonia. And so I dove into, the alchemy of printing, meeting the weavers that were in the building. The basement flooded, and I helped her. I got the pump to help her undo the flooding in the basement of the schoolhouse. It was amazing. I visited my extended family, and I was also alone a lot of the time, which is unusual for me, and it was wonderful. So, Estonia was this place where I could move slowly and I could think and feel deeply, which was pretty revolutionary for me in my life as a working midwife and a mom and a busy person. So it changed everything. So when I came home, I promptly made all 22 pieces of art you see here on the walls over the next several of months. It just flowed right out of me. I wrote down some ideas for this show. Can I cut a mason jar in half and mount it on the wall? Should I make paintings that are the color of that teal glass from the apple jar? What about doing something with sticks and lichen? I even thought of potential names for this show. Stop doing it all. Estonia was waiting. What more can we hold? A revolutionary act. What I found that I wanted to capture was this feeling of what I could only hold so much. There were stories I didn't know. There were stories I would never know. That people were gone that I could no longer ask. And there was this possibility, and there was also this closure. And so that's what this show is really about, and that's why it's really hard to explain. So the work. As you can see, I kind of group it into 3 areas. There are closed circles, there are open circles, and there are partial circles. All the titles come from a book that's out in the case, my little show and tell case over there, my installation. Thank you. It's an Estonian book, and the titles come from there, although sometimes I've changed the words around a little bit to make them feel more right for the works. And so anyway, I realized it wasn't all about Estonia. This work also goes back, to some painting techniques that I was doing 10 years ago, to jewelry that I was making 30 years ago, and to drawings that I've been doing my whole life. So it wasn't just about Estonia, though I thought it was initially. You see there's a theme here of thinking it's one thing and finding out it's another. So this piece back here, behind my husband and the camera, this is called The Forest Gave Them Security. And as I had mentioned, my family escaped because they received a note and they otherwise would have been executed or sent off to a Siberian work camp. But our many, many other Estonians, they hid in the forest, sometimes for months. So another little excerpt from my journal from the time that I was there. Pack warm and useful clothing, the residency director had emailed. There is a bus stop 1 kilometer away, and you can get to the grocery store in a 20-minute walk or a shorter bike ride through the snow. I heard this practical comfort with nature outlook when I walked through the California redwoods with my Estonian cousin. Speaking about mushrooms, this city girl said, "In my forest," with a certainty of a woman who has a forest. A national or personal forest, is this the same thing? I hike in the forest in the park. Her words touched someplace in me. This piece here with the pear, with the yellow, those are called Now There Were More Listeners Than Talkers. When I was 20 years old and I moved to California, or shortly after, I took a chip from the wall of my grandmother's living room. There was this yellow. And when I went to Estonia, which was pretty black and white because of the winter, I was shocked at how much of this yellow I saw there. In the lichen, in moss, the buildings, even the residency schoolhouse building was painted. And you'll see that in the picture I have over there. So then the other one is the wire. The other pieces are the pieces with the wire. There's a piece on the wall here, there's a little one here, and then even these ones here and behind me used wire in the making. So I do work with wax, and what's really nice about wax is it's very sculptural. So I was really playing with the sculptural element in these pieces. So remember, I found this wire. I didn't use this wire in that. I made a new piece of wire, but this is my wire from Estonia. It's special. But anyway, I did lay wire in, poured the wax, and then pulled the wire out. So it's a form of printmaking in a way. And then the other pieces where the wire is suspended as part of the sculptural piece are really, for me, when I was a metalsmith, I did, things with a torch, and I didn't just work with wire, but I did work with wire, and so pulling that in has been exciting for me. And then I guess, the other thing I want to mention about that is that both wire and wax, if you heat them, they soften. So there's this idea of the rigidity and the malleability, and I'm really playing with that because it really goes with this theme, right? Of how open or closed we are. Push and pull between past and present, known and unknown. And then lastly are the partial circles. So these are the ones that really look like landscapes. So the one out by the fore, right there behind my son, the little round one here. So what these are is these are the edge of a really big circle. And in fact, if you think about it, the earth is round. It is an edge. Our landscapes are the edge of a circle, if you will. So these are really about the tension and vibration of, again, that knowing and unknowing, being on the precipice of something, and also because they have such a nature feel, it's just always important to me on my work, you know, the sort of the cycles of you know, the leaf goes down to the ground, becomes the soil, becomes the tree, the leaf falls again. It's just for me that reminder of all the connectivity and how the cycles keep going, the circles keep turning, family histories keep rolling on, whether we know or don't know as they go. I mean, I guess that's really all I have to say about the work. I want to say I don't know how I'm doing on time. There's a talk across the hall at 3 and one down the hall at 3:30. But I would love to answer any questions that you have. I do really appreciate you coming, and I hope that when you look at the work, you can put your own memories, your own feelings into them, that they can be a space for you to remember what you want to remember and maybe forget what you don't want to hold on to, and then it could be that way for you. So thank you all for being here. Any question? Yeah. So I work on multiple pieces at once. So I came home immediately with this idea of imprinting. So I started on these little, the 4 here, I started on those right away because I was really excited about translating this wire. And I also started on this piece, the really big one. So that's where I started, is when both of them together. And for this, I really wanted to see how it felt. This is the largest encaustic piece I've ever made, and then I made that one. So it's very hard to work large and encaustic. I work flat, and I use a torch to melt each layer into the one below. And so I actually have to make these in a series of tiny, tiny paintings. You can't just like torch the whole thing. I mean, you can, but then it just doesn't really turn out right. So anyway, I love the challenge of doing this really big one and trying to, like working with this pencil, this feeling. You see this area a lot, and you'll see it in these as well, this vibration feeling. It was this feeling like that I'm always on the edge of something. So I wanted to express that in the little ones. And yes, I'm not done with it at all. Yeah. So, I mean, and I find that often the practicality is kind of like I mentioned, you do something that's practical and then you're like, oh, that's why that happened, right? So for these, it's a practicality. Because I work flat, a piece this big, if this were all one, to lay that down and to lift it would just kill my back, to be honest, to be picking up and then putting it down. And I'm constantly moving them because I have to take the heat from all the different angles. It also, like, the bigger piece wouldn't fit in my car. To bring it home from the store, it's easier to bring the 2 panels. So that I did drill them and they were bolted, so I did have to rent a van to bring them here. But they can be disassembled, But so that was a practicality. Same thing for this. It's this way because that's what allows me. I have the 2 panels because it allows me to stand the wire away, so it creates the shadow and isn't touching the painting below it. But also I just love working with wood. I like working with my hands and being physical. So I had a lot of fun, kind of getting the groove, sanding it down, finishing the edges really nice. So, I think you're right. There could be a duality, certainly, but we never know what's coming through. But mostly it's practical. Yeah. Around the area, I have a couple of things that I worked on that are very small, and out in the display case, like for example, you'll see some small wooden sculptures. Those are the offcuts of the wood that I saw for the sundial, and I ended up working on those. I made actually a whole series, and most of them I gave away to the people in the community, but I just brought a few home for myself. Some of the prints, I have some larger prints of this where, that are about this big, and I was able to bring them home, but I'm not showing them here. Yeah. I think about that a lot, and then sometimes I forget what the answer is, right? Like I'll think about it, and then I'll say, oh, maybe it's different today. But I mean, the line for me is really about connection, like connecting with other people. Sometimes I do work around language, which is why I'm really interested in the titles, and titles come from books. Communication, the ways that we interact with nature, and also I'm really interested in curiosity around time, which is that's why I made a sundial, I guess. I didn't expect that, so yeah. So those are kind of some themes that keep coming up in my work. Yeah. I was hoping that I'd make something even more sculptural than these sculptural paintings for this show, and I have started working on some work, but it wasn't ready enough to show anyone. So I definitely am going to explore that more, and I'm interested in sculptures that are either sculptures that we can hold in this size, or that are the size of us. That's kind of the scale. I realized when I made this sundial, I could actually sit in it. Yeah, it felt just, I don't know, they feel like another being, like something that you can nestle up to or carry with you. And so that's kind of it, yeah. So I use, in most of the works, I put a base of gesso on the board. I'm using these birch panels, and then I will draw directly on the board with oil pastel, like this blue is an oil pastel, or just a graphite, sometimes even just a simple old pencil or a colored pencil goes on there. And then I'll put layers of wax on top, like on this side, whereas this color here comes from integral to the wax. Whereas like some of these here, the light color in all of these is actually the natural birch sewing through. So when I gessoed the board, I masked away those parts to leave so you can see the natural birch. And then sometimes I will add another line of essentially graphite on top. And often when I do that, I use this special paper. It's like mimeograph paper. I don't know how many old people. It's like a carbon paper, right? Carbon paper. So then so if I lay that down, the carbon side is against the work, and then I can draw on the outside. So what I like about that is that it removes me. I can't see exactly what I'm putting down, so it leaves this element of unknown, and I kind of be like a controlling person. So to be able to step back a little is good. And then the other thing that these have is some of these have like a really bold line, and that's where I've carved into the wax and then filled it back in with more wax, and then very carefully scraped it away so you can't see the transition point. So like that, this one here has a white line through it. All of this from this series, these kind of they all have some element of that in it, which I do use a lot in my work. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Great. Wonderful. Can I take a picture of all of you from here? Oh, I want to do the selfie thing. Hold on. This is like I'm like a comedian on stage. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Let me get here. Yay. Thank you all. I love it.